Union-backed Ford worker suspended after heated exchange with President Trump during Michigan visit. By staff reporter. Detroit, Michigan, January 2025. A brief but explosive confrontation between President Donald Trump and a union-backed auto worker during a visit to a Ford Motor Company facility in Dearborn has ignited a national debate over labor relations, political expression in the workplace, and the increasingly tense intersection of manufacturing and modern American politics. The incident, captured on video and widely shared across social media platforms, shows a Ford employee vocally heckling President Trump as he toured the factory floor ahead of his scheduled address to the Detroit Economic Club. In response, the president appeared to mouth an expletive in the worker's direction, twice, and made an unmistakable obscene hand gesture as he walked away. Within hours, the clip had gone viral, drawing millions of views and prompting swift reactions from labor leaders, political commentators, and corporate executives. By the following day, the labor union representing the worker confirmed that the employee had been suspended pending an internal review by Ford Motor Co. The moment, though brief, has become emblematic of the deepening cultural and political divides running through America's industrial heartland. A visit meant to highlight economic strength. President Trump's visit to Michigan was intended to underscore his administration's economic messaging, particularly as it relates to domestic manufacturing, job creation, and trade policy. Michigan, long considered the symbolic center of the American auto industry, has played a pivotal role in Trump's political identity, especially among blue-collar voters who supported his protectionist trade agenda during previous campaigns. On Tuesday, Trump toured the Ford facility in Dearborn before heading to downtown Detroit for a high-profile speech at the Detroit Economic Club, where he was expected to outline his vision for American industry, energy independence, and economic growth. The White House had promoted the visit as a showcase of American manufacturing resilience, emphasizing investments in domestic production and what officials described as a manufacturing comeback. Instead, the unscripted encounter inside the factory quickly overshadowed the planned economic narrative. The viral moment inside the factory. According to multiple eyewitness accounts and video footage circulating online, the confrontation began when the Ford worker, identified by union officials as a member in good standing, called out critical remarks toward the president as he passed through the facility. While the exact words spoken by the worker are difficult to hear clearly on the video, the tone is unmistakably confrontational. Trump, visibly irritated, briefly paused, looked toward the worker, and mouthed what appeared to be a profane insult. As he continued walking, he repeated the gesture and raised his middle finger, a move that was caught on camera and quickly became the focal point of online discussion. Supporters of the president dismissed the exchange as a minor, human reaction to provocation. Critics, however, accused Trump of undermining presidential decorum and escalating an already volatile situation. Union confirms suspension. In a statement released Wednesday, the union representing the Ford worker confirmed that the individual had been suspended while the company investigates the incident. "We are aware of the situation involving one of our members during the president's visit," the statement read. The member has been temporarily suspended pending a review process being conducted by Ford Motor Company. "We believe in the right of workers to express themselves, but we also recognize the importance of maintaining workplace standards and professionalism." Ford Motor Company declined to identify the employee or provide specific details about the suspension but acknowledged that it was reviewing the matter. Ford is committed to maintaining a respectful and safe work environment, the company said in a brief statement. "We are reviewing the incident in accordance with our internal policies." Free speech versus workplace rules. The suspension has reignited long-standing debates over free speech rights in private workplaces, particularly when political expression intersects with corporate policy. Legal experts note that while workers have certain protections under federal labor law, including the right to engage in concerted activity, those protections are not unlimited, especially when conduct is deemed disruptive or violates company codes of conduct. "People often misunderstand the scope of free speech in private employment," said a labor law professor at a Midwestern university. "The First Amendment restricts government action, not private employers." That said, unions and labor law do provide certain protections, particularly around political advocacy related to working conditions. Whether the workers' actions fall under protected activity is likely to depend on the findings of Ford's internal investigation and the specific context in which the comments were made. Political symbolism in the auto industry. The auto industry has long been a political battleground, with presidents from both parties seeking to align themselves with factory workers and union members. Trump's relationship with organized labor has been complex, marked by vocal support for domestic manufacturing alongside frequent criticism of union leadership. During his previous term, Trump often touted tariffs on imported vehicles and parts as necessary to protect American jobs, a position that earned him support from some rank-and-file workers even as union leaders expressed skepticism. The Dearborn incident highlights the reality that support within the auto workforce is far from monolithic. This wasn't just one worker speaking out, said a labor historian. It reflects deeper tensions within the working class about politics, trade, leadership style, and the future of manufacturing. Reaction from political leaders. Reaction to the incident split sharply along partisan lines. Several Republican lawmakers downplayed the exchange, emphasizing the importance of focusing on economic policy rather than personal gestures. The president was heckled in a loud industrial setting and reacted in the moment, said one GOP representative. What matters is his commitment to American workers and American industry. Democratic leaders, meanwhile, criticized both the president's behavior and the workers' suspension. No worker should face retaliation for expressing political views, said a Michigan Democrat. At the same time, the president should be setting an example of respect and leadership. Social media fuels the firestorm. As with many modern political controversies, social media amplified the incident at lightning speed. The video clip spread across X, TikTok, Facebook, and YouTube, where users dissected every frame and debated who was at fault. Some users praised the worker as standing up to power. Others accused him of jeopardizing his job for a political stunt. Trump supporters framed the moment as evidence of the president's authenticity, while critics described it as another example of norm-breaking behavior. Hashtags related to the incident trended nationally within hours, keeping the story alive well beyond the factory walls. Impact on Ford and corporate neutrality. Ford Motor Company now finds itself navigating a delicate situation, balancing employee rights, union relationships, and public perception while avoiding the appearance of political favoritism. Corporations have increasingly sought to maintain political neutrality, particularly in polarized environments where taking sides can alienate customers or workers. Companies like Ford are under immense pressure to stay out of political crossfire, said a corporate governance analyst. But when politics enters the workplace uninvited, neutrality becomes extremely difficult. A broader labor moment. The incident comes at a time when labor activism is experiencing renewed visibility across the United States. From strikes and contract negotiations to political endorsements, workers are asserting their voices in ways not seen for decades. For some observers, the confrontation in Dearborn is less about one worker or one president and more about a shifting power dynamic between labor, corporations, and political leaders. This is what happens when economic anxiety, political polarization, and social media collide, said a sociologist who studies labor movements. Small moments become national flashpoints. What happens next? Ford's investigation is expected to conclude within days or weeks, though the company has not provided a timeline. Depending on the findings, the worker could face reinstatement, disciplinary action, or termination. The union has indicated it will advocate for due process and fairness throughout the review. Meanwhile, President Trump proceeded with his Detroit Economic Club speech as planned, focusing largely on economic growth, manufacturing competitiveness, and energy policy. He did not directly address the factory incident during his remarks. Conclusion: a snapshot of a divided era. The Dearborn factory exchange may ultimately have little impact on policy or production numbers, but its symbolic weight is undeniable. In a single viral clip, it captured the tensions shaping modern America, between labor and leadership, expression and discipline, politics and professionalism. As the country moves deeper into another election cycle, moments like these are likely to become more frequent, not less. For now, one worker is suspended, one president is once again at the center of controversy, and a nation continues to wrestle with what respect, power, and voice look like in the 21st century workplace historical context, presidents and factory floor confrontations. While presidential visits to factories are often carefully choreographed, history shows that unscripted moments between political leaders and workers are not unprecedented. From Richard Nixon's encounters with labor leaders during the 1970s to Barack Obama's town hall-style factory visits, industrial tours have occasionally exposed raw political tensions. What makes the Dearborn incident stand out is the speed and scale at which it spread. In earlier eras, such moments might have been confined to local news reports. Today, a few seconds of smartphone footage can redefine an entire visit within minutes. This incident became a national story not because it was unprecedented, but because it was instantly visible, said a media studies expert. Virality has become a political force in itself. Union politics and internal divisions. The union's response to the incident has also drawn scrutiny, particularly from rank-and-file members who see the suspension as inconsistent with labor's long-standing tradition of political expression. Union leadership emphasized that the suspension was not disciplinary action imposed by the union itself but rather an employer decision pending investigation. Still, some workers have questioned whether union-backed employees should face consequences for expressing political dissent, especially during a high-profile political visit. "This raises difficult questions," said a former union organizer. "Unions exist to protect workers, but they also have to maintain relationships with employers. Those interests don't always align perfectly." Observers note that unions today are navigating a complex landscape, balancing internal diversity of political views with the need for institutional stability. Ford's calculated silence. Ford Motor Company's carefully worded statements reflect a broader corporate strategy aimed at minimizing risk. By avoiding commentary on the political substance of the incident, the company has focused instead on workplace conduct and internal review procedures. This approach mirrors a trend among major corporations that increasingly seek to distance themselves from overt political controversy, especially in election years. "Any statement beyond policy language could be interpreted as taking sides," explained a crisis communications consultant. "Ford is doing what most Fortune 500 companies would do in this situation: say as little as possible." Still, critics argue that corporate neutrality itself can become a form of political positioning, particularly when employee discipline is involved. The role of security and event planning. Sources familiar with presidential advance operations note that factory visits involve extensive coordination between the Secret Service, corporate security, and local law enforcement. Despite these precautions, interactions with workers remain difficult to fully control. "The goal is visibility without unpredictability," said a former federal security official. But when you put a president in a working factory, unpredictability is always part of the equation. Some analysts believe the incident may lead to more tightly managed future visits, with greater distance between political figures and unscreened workers, potentially reducing opportunities for spontaneous interaction. Cultural divide on display. Beyond politics and labor law, the exchange has been widely interpreted as a snapshot of America's cultural divide. Supporters of the worker frame the incident as an act of resistance. Supporters of the president frame it as disrespect toward national leadership. Both interpretations coexist, reinforcing existing viewpoints rather than changing minds. "This moment didn't persuade anyone," said a political psychologist. "It simply confirmed what people already believed." That dynamic, experts say, has become a defining feature of political discourse in the social media age. Implications for the 2025 political landscape. Although President Trump has not officially framed the incident as part of a broader campaign narrative, analysts suggest it could influence how future factory visits are conducted during the election cycle. Michigan remains a critical swing state, and labor-heavy regions are expected to play a decisive role. Even small symbolic moments can carry outsized significance in such environments. "Every interaction matters," said a veteran political strategist. "Voters don't just listen to speeches, they watch behavior." Worker advocacy groups respond. Several worker advocacy organizations issued statements following the suspension, calling for clearer protections for political expression on the job. These situations expose gaps in how workplace rules intersect with democratic participation, one advocacy group said. Workers should not have to choose between their livelihood and their voice. Others cautioned that disruptive conduct during secured events could pose safety concerns and should be handled carefully regardless of political context. A moment that will linger. Even as the news cycle moves forward, the Dearborn incident is likely to remain a reference point in discussions about labor, politics, and presidential conduct. For Ford, it is a reminder of the challenges facing global manufacturers in a polarized society. For unions, it highlights internal tensions and external pressures. For President Trump, it adds another chapter to a public persona defined as much by unscripted moments as by policy positions. And for the suspended worker, it represents a personal turning point, one that underscores the risks and consequences of political expression in the modern workplace. Final takeaway: what began as a routine factory visit evolved into a national conversation about respect, power, and accountability. The brief exchange in Dearborn did not change economic policy or labor law, but it captured the mood of an era, fractured, emotional, and relentlessly visible. As investigations continue and political tensions rise, one thing is clear: moments like these are no longer fleeting. They are archived, shared, debated, and remembered, long after the factory floor falls quiet.